Hello, welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Oh, feels weird filming after a little break, a little newborn break. But today I'm going to film my birth story with our second child. I have actually already filmed it, and I filmed it when she was 2 weeks old. She's now 4 weeks old. Filmed it when she was 2 weeks old, and I think my brain was just still a bit too mushy. So I watched it back and it's like all over the place and I can't quite get my train of thought, and it's just didn't go very well. So I'm gonna film it again and try and be a bit more concise this time. Got a little boy, Jet, who is about to turn 2, and I filmed a video all about my birth of him. It was a water birth in hospital using hypnobirthing, so I will link that below if you want to watch. This is the story of my second labour. So she was due on March the 5th, and on March the 5th, actually, on the Monday morning I woke up with like very, very slight period pain, really mild in the background. Just carried on as usual. Jet went to nursery in the afternoon, I was doing some work. I actually filmed my 40-week update. Didn't really feel anything else the rest of the day. And then in the evening, really early evening when we were putting Jet to bed, I started to get like really, really mild contractions, just like one every half hour or something. So like really, really far between. But everyone had said to me, oh, with your second child, you labour so much quicker. And so it was really on my mind that the moment we started getting signs of labour, we were going to need to kind of like step into action, and the baby could be here like hours later is what I thought was going to happen. So getting these slight mild contractions, we'd already made a plan with Henry, my husband's parents, that they would come and get Jet when I went into labour and take him to theirs. They live like an hour away, and take him to theirs maybe for a couple of nights. So he has a little holiday, and then when he comes back, I'm better and kind of up and about, as easy a transition for him as possible. So we phoned them and said, I think stuff's starting. So they drove over, picked him up. He was already in bed at this point. They got here at maybe like 9 p.m, picked him up in his sleep and took him back to theirs. And then the rest of that evening, just really on and off sporadically, I would have these really, really mild contractions. Then went to bed Monday night, woke up early Tuesday morning at 5 a.m. with contractions again. So I guess strong enough that they woke me up, but still very mild. But again, I just thought, wow, okay, this is gonna happen, like this is all gonna kick off and it's gonna go really quickly, so maybe I should get up and kind of start being really active. So I got up at 5 a.m. Looking back now, I'm so annoyed because obviously it was a toddler-free house. We could have had a really lovely long lie-in, taken it really slowly, but instead I got up, came through to the living room, was on my birthing ball, we put on some Friends, had some breakfast, and that was pretty much the story of the whole of Tuesday. I had a little nap like mid-morning, but nothing much. And then kind of early afternoon, we phoned triage. So we were planning, you can see a video about my home birth versus hospital birth thoughts. We were kind of semi-planning for a home birth. We had that in mind, but also I was really open to going into hospital. As someone that's having a home birth, you just phone triage as normal, and then they put you in touch with the home birth team. So we phoned triage Tuesday afternoon just to kind of check in. Oh, and I thought that my waters had maybe broken. Obviously you'd know if they'd like fully broken. I thought I was maybe just getting like a little trickle of waters, and I didn't really know what to look out for because we're not sure when my waters broke with Jet. I was obviously in water when I had him, and so they think that maybe they broke as I gave birth, but I wouldn't have known. So we phoned triage, and she was saying actually it sounded more like it was the mucus plug, which I didn't realise. The mucus plug just keeps kind of growing back. If you lose your mucus plug, say like a week before birth, that plug can then refill with mucus and then come away again. So I had actually lost it earlier in the week. She said that maybe I was just losing it again. So for anyone that doesn't know, mucus plug, if you're watching this as a first time mum, mucus plug is at the bottom of your uterus. Obviously it's really nice and closed and tight during pregnancy. When your body starts preparing for labour, could be a week before, could be the day of, you might not even notice it, but usually just before you start going into labour, the uterus obviously is starting to soften and open, and a bit of mucus and some blood that has been kind of sitting there, and as the uterus opens slightly, that falls away. So you can find that in your knickers, which is lovely. So we just phoned her to touch base and say, planning on a home birth, but we're open to coming into hospital, getting very, very mild contractions. We're still not timing them yet because they're too sporadic. So she just said, great, keep doing what you're doing, just resting and staying nice and chilled. And I felt like that's what we were doing, but looking back, I just don't know why I didn't go to sleep. I'm annoyed at myself. So then the rest of Tuesday afternoon, we were just chilling, watching Friends, and we watched Bridesmaids. brilliant film. As I said, I did hypnobirthing, and hypnobirthing talks a lot about oxytocin and all the endorphins and the really positive hormones that your body releases and how they help. Sorry, my card just got full. It was a really lovely day. Nice not having Jet here and just being able to really chill out and enjoy that kind of last day of quiet. So then Tuesday evening came and we phoned triage again just to check in, and we'd started timing the contractions at that point, but they were still every kind of like 5 or 6 minutes apart. We were a long way off still, and I still felt completely fine. I could tell her I wasn't near. A home birth lady came round at maybe about 7:30. Yeah, because it was just as she was finishing her shift. So she came around about 7:30 in the evening. We were just playing a game in our kitchen and having some dinner, and we'd lit some candles. Henry had tested out the pool because we had a pool in our living room in here. Everything was just really calm, really peaceful, and just going really smoothly. Again, at this point, we should have gone to bed, but we didn't. So we stayed up and the contractions kind of were still coming on and off, and I just thought, oh, I'm not going to go to bed because they were strong enough now that when they did come, I kind of had to breathe through them and concentrate, and I felt like if I went to bed, I wouldn't be able to sleep. I find it really pressured and a bit depressing when you're in your bedroom in the dark, but you can't sleep. Whereas I feel like if you come into the living room, you can kind of make it into a fun thing and put the TV on and distract yourself and kind of just embrace being awake. And so I thought I'd do the same with labour. So rather than going to bed, we stayed in here. I think again, probably just started watching Friends again. I was on the birthing ball, breathing through each contraction, just really thinking, oh great, this is really picking up, this is really starting. The home birth lady that came and visited, she also left us with some really nice aromatherapy oils that she'd done a little mix for us. So then Henry was using those, gave me a little foot rub and lower back massage, because that's where most of my pain was in my lower back. I had a hot water bottle as well, kind of strapped to my back with my tie from my dressing gown. The kind of main part of my labour was all through that night. So from midnight, it started kind of ramping up. The problem was, by this point, I had been up for so long and had such an early morning that morning before, and then had been up all day, and then it was obviously now into the night. I was just exhausted and my body just kept kind of shutting down, and the contractions Henry was timing them, and he wasn't actually telling me this at the time because he didn't want to overwhelm me, but my contractions were picking up and were kind of every couple of minutes, really strong, lasting a minute, and then I think probably like waves of just exhaustion would come over me and the contractions would just totally disappear, and I'd go 10 minutes without having one. And so we just didn't really know what to do. I didn't really understand, like, am I progressing, am I not? I was getting a bit down because I felt like this was supposed to be so much quicker than this wasn't supposed to last this long. I just thought this baby was going to come so quickly. That was even the thing that started us thinking about home birth, was because after Jet, the midwife said, oh, your labour was so fast, I'd suggest you have a home birth next time because you're just such a quick labourer. I think as well, it was the night, it was dark, I wanted to be asleep, and I think it all just got to me a little bit. This is when hypnobirthing is amazing, because Henry then was able to kind of speak these positive affirmations to me, just be a really positive influence on this overtired pregnant lady that was feeling very hormonal and very fed up and quite alone. I think there was definitely a point in the night where I felt quite alone. I think in hospital, obviously you go in and there's people around you. Even though they leave your room, you still know you're in this building of people that are there, professional, ready to help you. Whereas I felt like in the middle of the night, I suddenly just felt very aware that it was just us in our house. And although I felt safe, I also did feel just slightly alone. And I felt like anytime we phoned them, they'd always want to kind of just give us advice over the phone rather than coming out to us. And I understand that, because obviously that's a whole person leaving their role, doing whatever else they were doing, to come out to see us. So I can understand why now, but when I was in the moment, I just felt like, why aren't you just dropping everything and coming and helping me? Anyway, so someone came out about 2 or 3. We'd filled the pool and I was in the pool, because by now, again, the contractions were really strong. I was having to really breathe through them, really concentrate. I was in kind of a bit of a haze, and we'd made a playlist of calm, hypnobirthy, lovely music. And I actually just really wanted to listen to Ed Sheeran. So we had Ed Sheeran's latest album just on repeat. So we had that playing, I was in the pool, and the midwives came, 2 ladies came, and they just very quietly were like whispering to Henry over here. But I could hear them, and so I just turned and was chatting to them as well. And they were just trying to gauge how far along I was. At this point, one midwife says, okay, we're just gonna sit here and wait until you have your next contraction. But I just felt so pressured. Isn't it the same when you have hiccups, and that's one way to get rid of them, is if someone says, right, hiccup again. And then because you're waiting to hiccup, you end up not being able to. I felt like that with my contractions, because like, there was this lady literally sat on my sofa watching me, waiting for my next contraction to come. My body just like totally closed up and I didn't get one for ages. Which again was interesting, because that's another hypnobirthing thing, that when you feel kind of watched or intimidated at all, your body just doesn't do what it's supposed to do, because your body wants to feel really safe when it gives birth. So that was quite interesting. Anyway, so she obviously saw that I wasn't having this contraction for a very long time. I was in water, and she just said, you need to go to bed, you need to get some sleep. But I just felt like getting out the pool was somehow admitting defeat. And I think my birth with Jet was so straightforward and progressed just completely in like a linear way. There was no kind of stop-start. I think I just had it in my head that this was going to be the same. And so with Jet, as soon as I got into the birthing pool, I then dilated those last few centimetres, pushed for about 15, 20 minutes, and then he was born. And I think I just expected the same thing, and I felt like getting in the water, I was being really proactive, and by getting in the water I was going to make this baby just come. But obviously you can't just make the baby come. So eventually she persuaded me to get out of the water and go back to our bedroom and get into bed. But again, the contractions were really strong, and so lying down wasn't very comfortable by this point. So I was sitting, facing the bed, kind of leaning on, she set up lots of pillows on the bed, so I was leaning on those, sitting on the birthing pool and just rocking. I found rocking from side to side in your hips just was the most comfortable thing. Everything was really calm. I think I was just feeling a bit deflated and a bit sad, which again was probably not very good hormones to be going through my body. They said, you're doing really well, you're absolutely fine, you just need to rest, you need to get some sleep. This was maybe about 4 AM. So they went, we got into bed, I had the hot water bottle on my tummy at this point, I lay on my side, and then every time I got a contraction, Henry kind of like rubbed my lower back, which I found really helpful. And I think at this point I was just so tired I couldn't actually stay awake, even though I was getting these contractions. I basically felt like for 2 hours I had almost like a constant contraction, but it was because in between each contraction I was falling asleep, and then they were kind of stirring me and waking me slightly, and then I was falling asleep again. And Henry was saying, because he was awake for some of it, and he was saying you could tell like the contraction would come, and then my breathing after the contraction would just straight away go back to like sleepy kind of snoring almost. 4 till 6 we got some sleep, and that was the kind of turning point in the labour that made all the difference. At 6 AM I woke up, contractions again really strong, a bit closer together. And I felt like, okay, right, the sun's starting to come up. I've had a bit of sleep. I'm just determined to have this baby. I was just having none of it. I was just fed up of that it had been a second night. It was the last thing I expected. I really didn't think that I was gonna have 2 nights of thinking the baby was coming. So we got up, came back through to the living room, got back into the birthing pool, emptied a bit out, refilled it with some warm water, put Ed Sheeran back on, and then kind of 6:30 till for half an hour I was contracting every couple of minutes, really strong, lasting a long time, really kind of taking all my energy. I was really having to use all my hypnobirthing techniques, all my visualizations to kind of really see me through the contractions, breathing through them. From the moment we'd come through into the living room, I felt like, okay, I need the midwives here. I think this could happen. It was also really nice coming through. It felt coming through to the living room, we've got these shutters, and we opened up the shutters, the light was all coming in, we've got some really big windows. The day was starting, the night was over, and it just felt like really symbolic that the kind of nighttime stage of the labour, the dark stage, was over, and it was the day, and it was really positive. And yeah, anyway, that was just such a nice feeling. So at 7 o'clock, Henry phoned the midwives. They were crossing over shifts again. So it's a bit of a shame, we went over kind of all their shifts. So the midwife that had come at 7 PM the night before, she then finished her shift. Then the people that came at about 3 AM were then finishing their shift at 7 AM. So when we went at 7 AM, they said, okay, well, it's going to be the next shift. They'll come. Do you want them to kind of come onto their shift and then phone you? Or when they start their shift, do you want them to just head straight out? So we said, just head straight out, because I was, at this point, the contractions were really low. It was really intense, right down at my pelvis. It felt quite similar to a jet in that last stage when it was like really low down. 7:30, 3 midwives turned up. 2 midwives and a trainee midwife. The main midwife was Mags, the lady that we'd had a lot of our antenatal appointments with. So it was so lovely, this familiar face coming in, especially after we'd crossed over all these different shifts and had different people coming in and out. To have someone we knew and trusted come in was just the loveliest thing. And then I heard her whisper something to Henry, and basically the trainee midwife that had come was our lovely, lovely friend Eleanor from church. She'd also been at some of my antenatal appointments. She was on home birthing that day and she'd seen that it was my name, and she wasn't really sure if I would feel comfortable or not her being there. But I obviously totally did, so I was like, no, please come in, come in. And it was so lovely having her there. So they got in about 7:30 and were just kind of watching me and trying to work out where I was at, and I didn't want any internal examinations. And actually Mags was saying they don't normally examine second time mums anyway, which I didn't realise. She was explaining to me what I had never realised before, made sense of my whole labour, was that with your second baby, it's that kind of second stage, the really far along established part of labour, that can be much quicker. That first stage can still just be the same. So actually my labours ended up being really, really similar. I had kind of 2 days of very, very slowly building, and then kind of 6 hours of real established labour, and to you know, baby being born. I basically had the same thing again. And if I'd known that, obviously I wouldn't have thought of it as labour. I would have kind of carried on as normal and just made sure I was getting lots of rest. I wouldn't have been getting up early, sitting on my birthing ball, getting myself too much in the mindset too early. But anyway, I didn't realise. She basically explained that also with the second time birth, you could potentially only dilate a couple of centimetres, still be really early on, and then just like ping open in the last stage and just go from like 3 to 10 really quickly. She's basically saying we can't really tell how far along you are. It seems like you might still be in the early stages. And when she said the words early stages, I was just like, no, I can't, I'll just die. I can't be in the early stages of labour, please. Oh, if there's any justice in the world, I can't be in the early stages of labour. She's saying, well, you know your body, you're the only one that can feel these contractions. Do they feel different to the ones that you've been having through the night? Do they feel more intense? And I think actually looking back, I did know they were different. They were lower and they were much more intense, but I just was really confused, I think, at this point. I felt like my confidence had been knocked slightly in terms of being able to read my body and read how far along I was. And at this point, again, obviously they were really intense, and she said, would I like any gas and air? And I hadn't used gas and air with Jet. They had it there, and I was like, okay, well, I might as well try it, see if it helps. This was at maybe about 8 AM, and she said, if you are in the early stages of labour and you have gas and air for an hour and you're not progressing, we're gonna need to take it back off you. And so obviously that's quite a risk if you get used to having this pain relief and then it gets taken again. But again, in my mind, I just thought, no, I'm not going to be here for another hour. I just refuse. So I waited for the next contraction, then took a big puff of the gas and air and reminded myself of all the reasons why I don't like it. It doesn't actually make me feel nauseous, which I'm surprised about because I feel nauseous really easily. But it basically just makes you feel kind of drunk and just really out of it, and makes you feel really kind of dazed and over emotional. I just don't like it at all. And as soon as I took one puff, I remembered why I don't like it. And so then they took it away and I didn't have any more. So then I just turned back and I was in the birthing pool facing outwards with my arms resting on the edge and my hands holding onto Henry's hands. I'd lie down on the birthing pool in between contractions and just close my eyes and rest, listen to Ed Sheeran. And then every time a contraction came, I turned, clutched onto Henry's hands and kind of swayed and did my hypnobirthing breathing through the contraction. And then it would pass, and then do the same thing again. So this lasted for about half an hour, 8 till 8:30, and then kind of the like energy in the room just shifted. The midwives had been kind of in the kitchen doing bits of paperwork, making themselves a cup of coffee, and the other lady who I really annoyingly can't remember her name. So there was Mags and Eleanor, and then this other lady, and I can't remember her name, but she was sat on one of these pink chairs next to the pool. And then I just suddenly went into that next stage of labour, the down stage, when you're birthing the baby. And it's just crazy the way it changes. Your body just suddenly, I remember it was exactly like with Jet, it took me right back. Your body just suddenly has these urges to push, and the sounds you start making are completely different to when you're contracting. It all just gets like serious, like, right, this is happening. Kind of felt them all kind of rush back in, ready. You have this like pause, and then this sudden urge to push, and just everything in you just like pushes down with all your might during the contraction. And I was just clutching onto Henry, trying to do the down breathing the hypnobirthing talks about, that helps you kind of control your push and not waste any energy. And this lady next to me was just amazing, and she was just saying all the right things. She was encouraging me with my breathing and helping me find a better position. I kind of turned onto my side at one point and then back onto my knees, and she was just being amazing. And it was funny because Henry knew that with hypnobirthing and with my birth with Jet, the midwife hadn't really said anything, and I'd wanted it to be really quiet, and I just kind of followed my body. And so he knew that I didn't really want to be coached during the kind of pushing stage. In terms of being coached, I meant I didn't want someone to tell me to push, because I knew that my body would know to push, and I didn't want those voices kind of cluttering my mind. Obviously this lady wasn't coaching me at all, she was just being really encouraging. But Henry said in his head, he was like, oh gosh, this midwife's talking quite a lot, like I hope it's not annoying Ruth, I don't know if I maybe need to step in and tell her to be quiet. And then at this point, in between contractions, I turned to her and I just said, your voice is the nicest thing I've ever heard. I just remember she had a really lovely, like, caramel, calming voice, and just everything she was saying was so positive and so helpful. I remember just thinking, I love you so much. So it was about 15 minutes, 8:30 to 8:45 of, I think it was about 15 minutes, maybe a bit less. And then 8:45, she was born. So she was born obviously into the water. At this point I was kind of sat on my side slightly, and she was born, and I picked her up and plonked her on my chest, and just the feeling of relief and that it was over and that I'd done it, and that I think that's when I realised that I'd had a lot of negative thoughts I'd been trying to push aside in the night, that I suddenly was thinking, oh gosh, I'm going to need to go into hospital, I'm going to end up having a cesarean, this is just never going to progress. And then just this feeling when she'd been born naturally at home, oh, I just was so relieved. Just held her to my chest and was just saying thank you, thank you, thank you to all the midwives, because they'd just been so lovely. We didn't know the gender at this point, and as I'd picked her up, I'd felt the umbilical cord, and I thought, oh, it must be some little balls or a little willy or something. And so I turned to Henry, who was behind me, and said, we've got a boy. And he actually said later, he just didn't think we did. He just had a feeling it was a girl. And then I realised that she was a bit kind of caught up in the umbilical cord was kind of over her leg. So I went to kind of shift it and kind of free her, and I was holding her facing me. And then that's when I realised that she didn't have a willy. And then I just turned to Henry and said, it's a girl. And then we both just started weeping. And I think that's when we both realised how much we actually wanted a girl. It was very emotional, just holding her close, knowing that we had a daughter. It was just the most amazing feeling. I sat there keeping her under the water so she'd stay warm, and we were doing the delayed cord cutting. The umbilical cord, obviously, I still had the placenta inside me and it was still attached to her. And for about 5 to 7 minutes, the cord is still pulsing blood to the baby, because that's still where they've obviously taken their first breath, but they're still getting loads of their nutrients and blood from the placenta. And it takes about 7 minutes for it all to transfer into their body. And so if you were to cut, so I've got a bit of a cough, I feel like my voice is really low today. And so if you were to cut the cord then, I think it's something like about 50% of their blood would still be in the placenta rather than in their body, and so it's just not very good for them. And so the best thing to try and do is to have this delayed cord cutting. So you wait till it stopped pulsing. So the cord was just still like pulsing, not that you can kind of, not that I noticed it pulsing. Anyway, so I just held her. I kind of came over feeling just really shivery, really cold. I think just really overwhelmed that it was over. The water, I think, had got a bit cooler, and I just wanted to be out and I wanted to be wrapped up warm. And so I was kind of saying, oh, can I get out now? So they cut the cord as soon as they could, once it had stopped pulsating, or Henry cut it. And then I passed her to Henry. And so I kind of felt like this, almost like a contraction, but nowhere near as strong, just like a kind of sudden intense period pain. I felt that come, so I just stood up, and they have this little dish, so they like put this dish between my legs, and I stood up, and then it was the same with Jet, where the placenta just kind of came out and just fell away, came out into this pot that they had ready, that Eleanor had holding ready, and that didn't hurt at all. You don't feel like you're giving birth again. It's like so squishy, and like it doesn't hurt at all, just kind of came away. Then they got me out, wrapped me up all in my towels, and then I sat on this sofa, and it was just the most amazing feeling to have given birth like 5-10 minutes before, and then just to be sat on my own sofa. And then they passed me our little baby girl, and I had her on my chest, skin to skin, wrapped up inside my towel. And oh, it was just the most amazing feeling to be at home. So she was born at 8:45, weighing 8 pounds 7, and we named her Nova Wild Emmanuel, and she was and is perfect. And the rest of that day was just this lovely haze of napping and feeding and sitting here watching more Friends, staring at her, just soaking her up. ordering in Domino's and just enjoying that first day. And we had that first night as well, and then Jet came back the next morning. So that was my birth. It was, in general, I would say, it was really positive again. I was able to do it without pain relief, just using the water. Using hypnobirthing is just so powerful. It just makes such a difference. Water makes such a difference. It was amazing having her at home. Henry, again, was just incredible and saw me through. I think the negative side was just that I kind of got myself into the mindset on the Monday, and then obviously she wasn't born till the Wednesday. And looking back, I just wish I'd known how long it was going to be and known to not get myself into that kind of labour mentality until the Tuesday evening. But that's just what happened. But in general, yeah, I'd say, again, so positive. Loved using hypnobirthing, loved birthing her at home. My midwives were amazing. Check back in. I'm going to film a little 4-week update with Nova. I'll have her in the video to introduce you to her. So check back in for that, and please do subscribe for other pregnancy videos if you're still pregnant. I did all my pregnancy updates, but then also I'm now going to start doing baby updates and other little family vlogs and just general videos, that's what you like. So yeah, please do subscribe. Apparently as well, next to the subscribe button you have to click the alarm so that you actually get notified that I've put up a new video. Apparently that's like a new YouTube thing. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for sticking around for that whole video. I hope it was good. Lots of love. Peace out.